The first call came in like a crack in glass, sharp, sudden, and impossible to ignore. Shots fired. Hard Rock Casino. Multiple victims. Suspect on the move. By the time the words finished echoing through the police dispatch room, the city had already begun to change. Sirens braided through traffic, helicopters stitched circles into the night sky, and every camera, street, store, and smartphone turned toward the glowing tower of the casino like moths toward a burning star. Inside, the air still smelled of gunpowder and spilled champagne. Detective Marcus Hale stepped over a shattered slot machine, its lights blinking in confused celebration, coins scattered like metallic tears across the marble floor. He had seen crime scenes before, too many, but this one carried a different weight. Not just because of the bodies or the blood pooling beneath velvet carpets, but because the shooter had not been reckless. He had been deliberate. Security footage showed a man in a dark blazer, face partially hidden by the brim of a hat, moving with calm precision. No panic. No hesitation. He fired only when he needed to. Then he vanished into the maze of service corridors behind the casino floor. He knew the layout, Marcus muttered. Beside him, Officer Lena Torres nodded, eyes fixed on the tablet in her hands. Or someone taught him. Outside, news vans crowded the entrance, reporters rehearsing tragedy into microphones, already shaping the story for the world. Inside, Marcus walked through what remained of the truth. 3 victims. 1 security guard. 2 civilians. No clear motive. No manifesto. No shouted words. Just silence between gunshots. The killer had not come to make a statement. He had come to finish something. Marcus studied the bullet patterns, the angles, the distances. The shooter had avoided the central crowd, choosing targets along the edges. That wasn't random. That was restraint. And restraint, Marcus knew, was far more dangerous than rage. Across town, in a dim motel room lit only by the hum of a flickering lamp, the man removed his blazer and laid it carefully across a chair. His hands did not shake. He washed them slowly, methodically, watching diluted red spiral into the drain like a disappearing memory. On the bed, a folded newspaper waited. The headline had not yet been written, but he already knew what it would say. He allowed himself a small, tired smile. Back at headquarters, the task force assembled in tense silence. Maps covered the walls. Photos of the suspect blurred and sharpened with each attempt to define him. He's between 35 and 45, Lena said. Military posture. Controlled breathing. He's trained. And he wanted us to chase him, another officer added. He didn't hide enough to vanish completely. Marcus stared at the footage again, frozen on a single frame where the shooter glanced briefly toward a security camera. Not fear. Not anger. Recognition. He knows he's being watched, Marcus said quietly. And he doesn't care. The city fell into a familiar ritual, lockdowns, warnings, whispered fear in elevators and restaurants. Parents pulled children closer. Strangers studied strangers. The hunt had begun. Hours later, a break came from an unlikely place. A casino maintenance worker reported a forgotten backpack in a staff locker. Inside were gloves, a map of the casino, and a hotel key card. Room 417. The motel was a tired building on the edge of town, the kind people only noticed when they were trying not to be noticed. Police surrounded it in silence, weapons raised, hearts heavy with anticipation. Marcus approached the door first. Police, he called. Open the door. No answer. He signaled. The door burst inward. The room was empty, but the bed was warm. On the table lay a single note, written in neat, patient handwriting. You're closer than you think. Marcus felt a chill crawl up his spine. They traced fingerprints. They pulled DNA. They ran every possible database. And slowly, a name began to form, not in bold certainty, but in fragile, unsettling fragments. Evan Cross, former private security consultant, disappeared 2 years ago after a controversial investigation involving financial fraud tied to multiple high-profile casino executives. The case had collapsed. Evidence lost. Witnesses silent. Evan had lost his job, then his reputation, then his family, and now apparently his mercy. Marcus leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. "This isn't just revenge," he said. "This is a correction." Meanwhile, Evan stood on a pedestrian bridge overlooking the city lights. He watched police vehicles scatter below like anxious insects. He had planned for this moment, not for glory, not for chaos, but for clarity. They would hunt him, and in doing so, they would uncover everything they had buried. He checked his phone. No messages. No fear. Only time. Back at the casino, forensic teams uncovered something else. A hidden camera the shooter had planted near the victims. He hadn't just acted. He had documented. "He wants the footage found," Lena said. "He wants us to see it." And eventually, Marcus replied, "He wants the world to see it." The hunt accelerated. Airports tightened security. Border alerts flashed. Evan Cross became a shadow name whispered across every law enforcement channel in the state. But shadows, Marcus knew, only existed because of light. Late that night, Marcus received a private message on his phone from an unknown number. "Look deeper into the casino's offshore accounts. You'll understand why I had to start there." Marcus stared at the screen, heart pounding. This wasn't a man running. This was a man leading. He looked out through the office window at the sleeping city, realizing the terrifying truth. This case was no longer about stopping a shooter. It was about discovering how many people had helped create him. And somewhere, walking calmly through a crowd that had no idea who he was, Evan Cross lifted his eyes to a billboard glowing above the street, showing the Hard Rock Casino logo still shining as if nothing had happened. He whispered, barely audible even to himself, "You're next." And at that moment, Marcus's phone vibrated again with a live location pin, pulsing softly on the screen, leading straight toward a crowded downtown financial district, where glass towers reflected the city like mirrors that could no longer hide what they had been built to protect. Marcus didn't hesitate. He grabbed his jacket, motioned for Lena, and was already halfway down the corridor before anyone else processed the implications of that blinking location pin. Downtown financial district. Friday night. Restaurants full. Streets alive. Exactly the kind of place Evan Cross would choose. Police vehicles surged into motion, blue and red lights bleeding across glass buildings like restless veins. Helicopters lifted again, carving the sky with low mechanical thunder. Marcus kept his eyes on the map in his hand, watching them glide forward, not fleeing, not rushing, but moving with calm purpose.
"He's walking," Lena said.
"Not driving." "He wants to blend," Marcus replied. "He wants to feel invisible." They arrived near a plaza surrounded by banks, investment firms, and luxury offices. People laughed near fountains. Couples took selfies. Street performers played soft music that floated harmlessly into the night. And somewhere among them walked a man who had already killed. Marcus scanned every face, every posture, every shadow. Then his phone vibrated again. Not running, not hiding, watching. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. He typed quickly, "What do you want?" The reply came almost instantly. "I want you to stop pretending this city is innocent." Marcus looked up, spinning slowly, as if Evan might be standing right behind him. That moved again, sliding toward a tall glass building at the edge of the plaza, a financial consulting firm with dozens of late-night offices still lit. "He's going inside," Lena said. Teams fanned out, sealing exits. Marcus entered through the main doors, heart pounding, weapon drawn low. The lobby was silent except for the hum of elevators and the distant echo of footsteps on marble. Security guards looked confused, frightened, unprepared. "Anyone come through here just now?" Marcus asked. One guard nodded shakily. "Man in a blazer."
"Come."
Smiled at me. Marcus closed his eyes for half a second. Of course he did. The elevator indicators showed one car rising, floor by floor. They rushed to the stairs. Their boots struck concrete in urgent rhythm as they climbed. Marcus could almost feel Evan above them, unbothered, patient, already several steps ahead in a game only he fully understood. On the 22nd floor, they found the door propped open. Inside, the office lights were dim. Glass walls reflected their own tense faces back at them. Computer monitors glowed softly in the darkness like artificial stars. And in the center conference room, a projector was running. Marcus approached slowly. On the screen, frozen footage showed casino executives shaking hands with men whose faces were partially obscured. Files were stacked digitally beside them. Offshore accounts, hidden payments, dates that aligned perfectly with the investigation Evan Cross had once led. "This is his proof," Lena whispered. Marcus realized something horrifying. "He didn't come here to hide," he said. "He came here to leave this for us." Suddenly, the projector clicked. A video began to play. Evan appeared on the screen, seated in a shadowed room, face finally visible. His eyes were calm, but tired. Not the eyes of a monster, but of someone who had waited too long to be heard. "If you're watching this," Evan said softly, "then you're already part of it. Maybe you're angry, maybe you're afraid, but now you know what they buried." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "They called it a failed investigation. They said I made mistakes. But the mistakes were never mine. The mistakes were trusting a system that only protects what it owns." The video cut to documents. Names. Transfers. Political donors. Board members. "I didn't start with a casino because I hate gamblers," Evan continued. "I started there because that's where the money learned how to disappear." The video ended. Silence filled the room like heavy fog. Lena looked at Marcus. "This will destroy them." Marcus shook his head slowly. "This will make him the villain." They searched the floor. Evan was gone. Again. But he had left something else. On the conference table, a small device blinking softly. A live stream transmitter. "He's broadcasting," Marcus said. Across the city, screens began to flicker. Phones. Tablets. TVs in bars and homes. Evan Cross appeared live, walking through a parking structure, camera angled toward his face. "Tonight," Evan said calmly, "you will hear about a shooter. About a criminal. About a man who lost his mind. That story is easier to swallow than the truth." He stopped walking. "But I didn't lose my mind. I lost my family when they were threatened into silence. I lost my career when evidence vanished. And I lost my faith when justice became a luxury item." People watched in stunned silence. "I don't ask for forgiveness," he continued. "I ask for attention. Because attention is the only weapon you've left us." Police signals jammed. The live feed jumped between towers. Marcus followed the signal manually, tracing it through the city, like a digital heartbeat. "He's moving toward the river district," Marcus said. They raced again. Evan's voice continued over countless screens. "They think fear is my goal. But fear is only a side effect. Truth is the disease." He entered a deserted warehouse near the water. His footsteps echoed. "I could have vanished. I could have escaped. But then nothing would change. So I stayed." Police surrounded the building within minutes. Marcus stood outside, megaphone in hand. "Evan," he called. "It doesn't have to end like this." Inside, Evan smiled faintly. "It doesn't end," he whispered to himself. "It transforms." He stepped deeper into the warehouse, passing crates and rusted machinery. On the far wall, dozens of monitors displayed financial data, video evidence, and legal documents uploading to multiple secure servers across the world. Fail-safes. Backups. Insurance. Marcus entered cautiously, weapon lowered. "Evan," he said again, more quietly now. "I saw the files. I know they were real." Evan turned slowly. They looked at each other for the first time, without screens between them. "You believe me," Evan said. "I believe you were wronged," Marcus replied. "But this path only makes more graves." Evan's eyes softened, but his voice did not. "Graves were already there," he said. "I just removed the flowers." Outside, sirens multiplied. News helicopters hovered above the warehouse like mechanical vultures. Inside, the air felt thick with inevitability. Evan glanced at one of the monitors. The upload bar was nearly complete. You can arrest me, he said calmly. You can erase my name. But you can't erase what's about to surface. Marcus took a slow step closer. You don't get to decide how truth enters the world, he said. Evan met his gaze. No, he replied softly. But I get to decide when it stops being ignored. The final upload bar reached 99%. And at that exact moment, every screen in the warehouse flickered. The lights dimmed slightly, and Evan's phone vibrated in his hand with a message that made his expression change for the first time. Just a fraction, just enough for Marcus to notice something he hadn't seen before.
Fear.
Evan stared at the message as if it had rewritten the air around him. The glow from the screen reflected in his eyes, turning them briefly into mirrors of something he had tried to bury: uncertainty. Marcus noticed the shift immediately. What is it? He asked. Evan didn't answer. His jaw tightened, and he slowly lowered the phone. For a moment, the calm architect of chaos looked like a man who had just realized the blueprint was incomplete. They found her, Evan said quietly. Marcus froze. Found who? My sister, Evan replied. The one they told me was safe. The one they promised never to touch if I stayed silent. The upload bar behind him hovered at 99%, unmoving now, as if even the machines were waiting to hear what came next. They just sent me a picture, Evan continued. She's alive. But not free. Marcus felt a cold wave move through his chest. You never mentioned a sister. I never planned to, Evan said. Because she was the only thing they couldn't take from me until tonight. Outside, the police perimeter tightened. Inside, the tension shifted. This was no longer only about justice or exposure. It was about leverage. Marcus took another careful step closer. Evan, listen to me. If they have her, then everything you're doing is exactly what they want. Evan laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. No. What they want is for me to choose between truth and blood. He looked back at the monitors at the evidence seconds away from becoming irreversible history. They trained me to protect people, Evan said. Then they taught me how to abandon them. Marcus lowered his weapon fully now. You don't have to abandon her. Let us help you. Evan's eyes met his. Help me how? By negotiating with the same system that sold us both. The upload bar flickered to 100%. A soft confirmation tone echoed in the warehouse. The truth was no longer theirs to stop. Evan closed his eyes for a moment, breathing slowly, as if bracing for impact. Across the city, notifications exploded. Newsrooms lit up. Whistleblower networks began downloading and verifying the data. Names started trending. Corporations issued emergency statements before anyone even knew what they were apologizing for. And somewhere far away, a group of people who believed themselves untouchable felt the first crack in their foundation. Evan opened his eyes again. It's done, he said. Marcus exhaled slowly. No. It started. Suddenly, Evan's phone rang. Not a message. A call. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. A distorted voice came through, smooth and controlled. You are very close to doing something brave, the voice said. But bravery is expensive. Evans said nothing. The voice continued. Your sister is sitting in a room with white walls and no windows. She's been very cooperative so far. I'd hate to see her lose that habit. Marcus could hear the faint echo of the voice through the phone. Let her go, Evan said. A soft chuckle. That depends on you. On what? Evan asked. On whether you disappear, the voice replied. Not arrested. Not martyred. Forgotten. Marcus shook his head slowly, whispering, Don't listen. Evan raised a hand, silently asking him to wait. What if I don't? Evan asked. Then she becomes the example you never were, the voice answered calmly. The call ended. Silence returned, heavier than before. Evan looked at Marcus, and for the first time, his confidence was gone. They still think they own the ending, Evan said. They don't, Marcus replied. Because now we know where they hide. Evan looked around the warehouse. Do you? Marcus didn't answer immediately. He was thinking, calculating, realizing something dangerous and necessary. I know how they think, Marcus finally said. And I know how they clean their mess. Evan studied him carefully. You're offering to become part of it. I'm offering to break it from the inside, Marcus replied. Outside, the commanding officer's voice echoed faintly through loudspeakers, demanding surrender. Time was collapsing. Evan looked back at the monitors. They'll bury me in court. Or bury me in a headline. Not if you testify, Marcus said. Not if you give me everything you know. Not just files, faces, routines, weaknesses. Evan hesitated. You'd still be a criminal, Marcus added. But you wouldn't be their distraction anymore. Evan smiled faintly. You're asking me to trust another system. No, Marcus said. I'm asking you to trust one tired detective who's sick of pretending the city deserves blind faith. Evan's shoulders lowered slightly. Then, suddenly, a distant explosion echoed outside. The warehouse trembled. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Marcus turned sharply. What was that? Before Evan could answer, his phone vibrated again. A new message. Different number. Unknown symbol. Just 3 words.
We see you.
Evan's expression hardened. They're closer than we think, he said. Marcus moved toward the door, signaling to Lena through his radio. Lock down every street within 5 blocks. No one moves. The radio crackled with confused responses. Their people are already inside the perimeter, Evan said. They always are. Footsteps echoed somewhere in the building. Not police. Too quiet. Too controlled. Marcus raised his weapon again. Warehouse has at least one unknown contact, he whispered into the radio. Evan stepped back toward the monitors, pulling a small device from his pocket. If they take me, he said, these files go public again every 12 hours. Automatically. Marcus nodded slowly. Good. The footsteps grew closer. A shadow moved behind a stack of crates. Marcus shifted his stance. A figure emerged, not armed, not rushing, but walking calmly, as if he belonged there. He wore a suit. No badge. No fear. He looked at Evan with something close to respect. You made a mess, the man said. Evan smiled without humor. You made a system. The man glanced at Marcus. You must be the conscience. Marcus didn't respond. The man continued. You think tonight changes anything. It doesn't. It only changes who suffers first. Evan stepped forward. Then let her go. The man tilted his head. That depends on how willing you are to disappear in the right way. Marcus felt the tension stretch like a wire about to snap. Don't, Marcus said quietly to Evan. Evan didn't look at him. He looked only at the man in the suit. And for the first time since the casino, Evan cross-hesitated between the truth he had unleashed and the blood he was still trying to protect, standing in a warehouse full of evidence, surrounded by enemies wearing legal faces, while the city outside believed the story was already finished. Evan's silence felt heavier than any confession. The man in the suit waited, perfectly still, as if he already owned the moment. His calm was not confidence, it was habit. He had stood in rooms like this before. He had watched people choose fear over truth many times. Marcus took one step forward. You touch his sister, he said quietly, and every file he released becomes a roadmap to you. The man smiled faintly. They already are. Evan finally spoke. You told me to disappear, but you never said my sister would be free. She will be, the man replied smoothly. Eventually. Evan exhaled slowly. Eventually is just another word for never. For a long second no one moved. The warehouse felt suspended between two futures. Then Evan did something no one expected. He turned his back on the man in the suit. He walked toward Marcus. I'm done bargaining with ghosts, Evan said. If I vanish, they win. If I fight alone, I lose. But if I stay visible, they can't bury everything. Marcus understood instantly. You're choosing exposure over survival. Evan nodded. I'm choosing memory over silence. The man's smile faded for the first time. You think martyrdom scares us? No, Evan replied calmly. But witnesses do. Marcus raised his radio. Lena, bring every camera you have. Live feed.
Now.
The man in the suit stepped back slightly. "You're making a mistake." Evan looked at him with quiet certainty. "You already did." Within seconds, officers flooded the warehouse. Cameras rolled. Microphones captured everything. The man in the suit was no longer just a shadow. He was a face, a name, a presence that could not be denied. He tried to speak, but Marcus cut him off. "You don't get to narrate this," Marcus said. "You only get to be part of it." They restrained him. Evan stood still, breathing slowly, as if the weight he had carried for years was finally leaving his body. Marcus turned to him. "We'll find her," he said. "Not with threats. With light." Evan nodded, eyes glistening but steady. "That's all I ever wanted." In the days that followed, the city changed in ways no one had predicted. Executives resigned. Investigations reopened. Courts issued warrants that had once seemed impossible. The public didn't just watch the story. They demanded it continue. And when Evan's sister was finally found, alive and trembling but free, she did not cry when she saw him. She held his face in her hands and said, "You didn't disappear." Evan answered softly, "Neither did you." Evan Cross was sentenced, not as a monster, not as a hero, but as a man who broke the law to expose a greater crime. He accepted it without anger, because for the first time, the courtroom felt honest. Marcus testified, not as a policeman protecting a case, but as a witness protecting a truth. The man in the suit vanished into a system that no longer protected him. His name became one of many, proof that power could bleed. Months later, the casino lights still glowed. The city still rushed. People still forgot faster than they should. But something remained. In a small visiting room, separated by glass, Marcus sat across from Evan. "You know," Marcus said, "they'll study this case for years. They'll argue whether you were right or wrong." Evan smiled faintly. "They always argue about the people who refuse to stay quiet." Marcus nodded. "I used to believe justice was about winning." Evan looked at him. "What do you believe now?" "That it's about not lying to ourselves anymore." Evan leaned back slightly. "Then maybe this wasn't just a hunt." Marcus stood to leave.
No.
It was a reminder. Outside, the city moved on, unaware that one man had refused to let its secrets stay buried. And somewhere between headlines and memory, Evan Cross stopped being just the name of a shooter. He became the echo of a question no system likes to answer. What happens when the truth refuses to die? The glass between them reflected two men, one who had chased and one who had been hunted, now bound by something stronger than fear. The story did not end with sirens. It ended with awareness. And awareness, once awakened, never truly sleeps.